Very good day to you in studio and to the viewers. Well, the scourge of gender-based violence has once again resurfaced here in East London, where communities in Duncan Village were up in arms demanding that it comes to an end. And this follows a 14-year-old boy who was raped by an 48-year-old man here in East London and is currently out on bail. The community says that issues of gender-based violence are rife there, particularly members of the LGBTIQ community. They also say they are not happy and they feel unsafe as community members. They say they are not accepted the way they want to be accepted by community. They say their lives at risk every time they walk out of their homes. But with me, I have the director of the organization Masimanyane, Dr. Lesley Ann-Foster, to tell us about these issues of gender-based violence. Very good day to you too. And kindly tell us, what do you make of marches that communities mobilize and take it to the streets to say no to gender-based violence? How much of an effect does it have?
Good day to you and good day to all the viewers today. I think it is very, very exciting when we hear about communities actually taking up the fight against gender-based violence. I believe that the work that organizations such as Masimanyane Women's Rights International have done has raised the level of awareness as to the forms and the extent of gender-based violence in our country. And we work with communities to take local responsibility at the local level for addressing these issues. Because they are issues that are rooted in our families and in our society and a community, it takes a collaborative effort between the state and state agents such as the police and community-based organizations and individuals to fight the scourge of gender-based violence in our country.
The communities that we engaged them, one of the residents was telling us that substance abuse such as drugs and alcohol, they have an impact towards gender-based violence. What can you say on that?
Well, it is true to an extent that drugs and alcohol abuse is some of the drivers of gender-based violence, but they're not the only drivers. The real drivers of gender-based violence are inequality. It's the fact that women's lives do not matter, and I'm talking about women and girl children. It's that women and girl children have low status within our society, and because of that, their bodies are just used and they commodify, what we call commodification of the bodies. So this is why gender-based violence happens. And it's because of our social norms which teach that men have the privilege to be able to control women's lives and their bodies, and that women are subservient to men, that so much of the gender-based violence happens. So part of what we are doing is looking at those social norms and looking at ways in which we change attitudes and behaviors, the way in which we change the way we relate to one another as women and as men, and boys and girls as well. So we have to get down to the root cause of gender-based violence in order to shift it. So the work that currently happens on prevention, which is awareness raising, it's your marches, it's the protests that you have. These are very important because they raise the consciousness of the nation to how serious the problem is. And so when this happens, we are very happy because we know that the work we're doing has an impact. It's reaching people.
What about the LGBTQI community? They say they're unsafe in that area. In terms of your stats, where do they lie? Is it rife amongst them that they also fall victim to gender-based violence?
I think the LGBTQIA plus community are very vulnerable, because of the inequality in our society, because of societal perceptions of people that they perceive to be different. They feel that such people should be subjected to violence. Some people feel that way. So we know that there's high levels of violence against that particular community, people from that community. And it is true that people are killed because of their sexual identity. And that's wrong. On any which level you look at it, another human being has the right to be here and has the right and the choice to be who they want to be. And that is something that we need to work with communities to understand and to accept. So we're on a slow drive to getting that consciousness and that acceptance of people. You know, we have a human rights framework in our country. We have a very progressive constitution, one of the best in the world. And in our constitution, the rights of every citizen, irrespective of who they are, of what color, what race, what ethnicity, what social background they come from, what educational background they come from, and particularly what sexual identity they have, is protected in that constitution. But the principles and the values of that has not yet been accepted by our society as a whole. So there is a real lot of work that has to happen around that. And that comes back to the work that the presidency did last year. We had an interim steering committee which looked at a national strategic plan on gender-based violence and femicide. And that national strategic plan looked into all of these drivers, looked into all of the different forms of violence and said, what is it that we need to do to change this? Because up until now, the approach has been to look at women as victims or survivors of gender-based violence, to then deal with them from that perspective. Now we're saying there's so much more. We've learned over the last 2.5 decades that there's so much more that needs to happen to change the trajectory of gender-based violence in our country. So the new National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide has got to be our guiding document in changing our society. So we're really looking at moral regeneration, we're looking at social cohesion in that document, and we're looking at a comprehensive strategy to eradicate gender-based violence and femicide. Remember, femicide is a really critical issue because so many women are losing their lives. They are being killed by partners simply because of their agenda. So this is a very big challenge that we have in the country, which we are now addressing through the presidency.
Well, I thank you so much for your time, ma'am. Well, that was the director of Masimanyane Women International here in East London, Ms. Dr. Lesley Ann-Foster, telling us about what they are doing as an organization to eradicate and curb the scourge of gender-based violence. From us here in East London, myself, Abongile Jantjies, and my colleague, Agcobile Vena, it's back to you in studio.